My name is Arian Kafey, and I am Vice President of the Choral Consortium of San Diego. Welcome to our first conductor conversation of the season. Choral Consortium of San Diego is a service organization for choruses and individuals who support the choral arts from throughout San Diego County. I'm super excited to say we have over 80 choruses right now participating in Choral Consortium. And as part of our service to the county and to choral arts in the region, we provide educational programming, of which this is a part, Conductor Conversations. And today I'm really excited to be joined by two fantastic educators and musicians and conductors and administrators. They do it all. Marielena Teng and Brian Lustig, newly entering the San Diego scene, but already such a valued and such a wonderful part of our choral cohort here in the city. So just a few logistics before we get started here. Please make sure to stay muted during our conversation. So go ahead right now and find your mute button. Excellent. I see all folks muted. Fantastic. And we're going to go ahead and get started here and introduce our participants. So Marielena, will you please introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Marielena Teng. I go by she and her, and I am the intermediate choir director for the San Diego Children's Choir, and I am also a high school and middle school choir teacher in the San Diego Unified School District.
Welcome to you. And Brian.
My name is Brian Lustig. I just moved here from Columbia, South Carolina. I'm the director of choral activities at First United Methodist Church here in Mission Valley. And I just oversee all the choirs that happen there for our two services on Sunday mornings, and keeps me busy, and it's a great time so far. Yeah,
I'm really excited about the breadth of experiences that we have here today and the kind of various parts of the spectrum of choral music making that we have participating. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a little bit about the format, folks. I've given our participants a list of questions from the fanciful and silly to the more sort of philosophical and introspective, to questions that survey what is happening in the arts and the choral arts in our region. And our one participant will ask the other a question, which they will answer, and then that participant will which will answer, and then the person who asked it initially will answer the question, and then we'll flip. It'll be a lot easier when you see it. So Brian, I believe we said you were going to begin, so why don't you go ahead and get started?
Okay, sure. So I'm going to start with a little bit more of a serious one. So who or what inspired you to pursue your career?
Oh man. For me, it was a lot of things. But I think it was this one time I was watching a class, and in my undergrad, we're required to watch active music teachers in our district. And I think it was Margie Oram or another teacher at the time. And it wasn't just them teaching, it was the students, and they were about third and fourth graders. And what I really loved was their ability to maneuver their bodies and move with the music and learn music through movement. And I thought that was really exciting. For some reason, I really liked it. I really loved it. And it kind of really inspired me to get really into education and get into all the nuances and of teaching. And later on, as I kept going, I realized as well that I just cared about education. And once I realized that I couldn't really define why I cared, it became a reason why I should stay in it and kind of like pursue this career. And I chose conducting, I chose music because I think it's really fun and allows students to express themselves in ways that they might not be able to in normal words and normal settings. So what about you? Who or what inspired you to pursue your career?
So I love hearing about your experiences. Thanks so much. So for me, I grew up in some really nice general music classes and enjoyed that. And I joined this high school choir. I happened to go to a nice public school in upstate New York. And our music teacher was great. And clearly, at the time, I didn't understand basically any of it. But she had like a really nice, well oiled machine where she had a lot of people who could read music in her just kind of y'all come choir. And I just didn't know any of what they were doing. And it was just so fascinating to me. I mean, here I was in choir and I was like, I don't even know what page I'm supposed to be looking at. Like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. I just didn't get it, you know, like I like took music classes. So I was like kind of familiar with it a little bit, but it just nothing really clicked with me until I saw other people like really getting it. They understood how to do it. And so they were like, no, it's kind of like you take music theory. So I took music theory the next year. This was my sophomore year of high school. And that was my first like time where music started really kind of clicking. And it clicked quickly. It all just made sense. I was like, this is really logical. I love it. I may not be the best at it right yet, but I know that I love it. I'm gonna keep going after it. And then the next year I took AP music theory. And I was like, well, this is really crazy and awesome. And that the summer leading into my junior year, I auditioned for this summer music program, which is held on the other side of New York. And I learned from this guy, his name is Dan Vera, and he was the conductor at ECU at the time, East Carolina University. And he was the head of this program for kids in New York to audition for. And he brought a lot of his faculty there. So for about a month, we were like in music school. And I was just like, this is incredible. This is unbelievable. I can't believe I'm doing music all the time and I'm just learning. And this is unbelievable. So from then on, I was like, wow, I really had no idea that you could pursue it. I really had, it just really opened my eyes to that. And then it's just life is crazy. So I went and did an undergraduate degree in music, and then I studied with Dan as my graduate professor. So this guy that I had met when I was like really young is really like foundational to my musical understanding. So yeah.
That's really cool. The fact that it sounds like you're super immersed in music in high school and like it kind of just cultivated that interest. I think that's really cool. I love hearing those stories because for me, I just never, in truth, I'm a military brat, so I moved around a lot. And so I went to schools that had little to no music programs. So what I did growing up was I took a lot of private lessons. I learned how to sing at an early age and maintain my voice. But when you take private lessons and you move around a lot, your teachers are kind of inconsistent.
Right.
So like music theory went over my head. And it's just really cool to hear how immersive your experience was, because as a teacher now, I think that's also why I choose to do what I do. I see the arts, and especially in academic settings, kind of from an outsider's perspective, because a lot of the schools that I went to barely had the arts. I think one of the high schools that I went to, they didn't even have a choir program. Or they got rid of it while my time was there. So singing was for me primarily through church or through private lessons and doing competitions. And it wasn't until I really got to college again where that choral setting kind of like impacted my life. But yeah, now that I teach it, the way I see it and try to reach my students is from that outsider lens. It's trying to connect from their perspective, because right now I'm kind of like building my programs at at Mira Mesa High School and Challenger Middle School. So it's tough.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but all of the stories that I hear from you all, it's kind of like the goal for me, and trying to pursue that so that my kids can have those stories too. So
Absolutely. And I'm positive that you're already so positively impacting. Yeah, just teaching is incredible.
thank you. So I think we'll go back to the list here. Yeah. So let's chill a little bit with what is the best kind of sandwich?
Oh, okay, yeah. So like I said, I grew up in upstate New York, and there was this little town called Hopewell Junction, and in this town there is like a really great pizzeria.
Mhm.
I don't remember what it's called, but they made the meanest Italian hero, and I don't know that I've had a better one since then. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, and so I lived in England for a year, and I feel like their sandwich game is pretty terrible. But I really do think their food game in general is pretty miserable. Uh, I never said that. But yeah, so I would say a good Italian hero will do it for me, every time. But it's got to be like, good.
Mhm.
How about you?
For me, I really like banh mi, which is the Vietnamese sandwiches. And I know you just, I think, recently moved here to San Diego. So if you haven't had Vietnamese food, you got to. And there's like three different, no, not three, there's like 10 different Vietnamese restaurants here in Mira Mesa. So I really love banh mi because they have like the French bread, and then they have these like savory or sweet kind of meat, marinade meat, and then vegetables and those type of things. And just things are just so unique to the Vietnamese culture. And I just love taking a bite into it. It has a nice crunch and like
Mm.
that kind of like taste of flavor out of nowhere that I really, really like. So for me, it's banh mi.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, let's see here. Ooh, here's a good one. Like, if you could snap your fingers and immediately alter one thing about the choral art slash profession slash system in San Diego, what would you alter?
Ooh, well, I would say snap one finger. The thing for me, it's and I don't know if people would like it, but
That's okay.
um um I think it's a crazy thing, but we need to in my perspective, we need to provide like a choral ensemble that really is half singing, half instruments. Like right now at the high school, I have a group of kids that started a rock band. And it's not something that as classically trained singers we look for, or we are strongly educated in my opinion. But they started this rock band, and since then we've cultivated kind of like this collection of guitars, drum sets, microphones, speakers, and it's been such a eye-opening experience for my singers in my class because for them, they have one type of lens of choir, and that's sometimes it's only the classroom setting.
Mhm.
But in class, I try to tell them, like, the stuff that I teach you can be applied to all different types of genres and styles. And since this group of kids started this band, they're actually applying some of the technique into the rock band. And
Mm.
so I know this is a different way of saying it, but I wish we could take kind of like the general education where it's half instrument, half vocal arts, everything, and still continue that into choir to a point where it's not just choir you're singing the entire time and then a few instruments. There's a class that is dedicated to full on ensemble instrumental singing, the full package experience,
Wow.
because it's really making my singers or my students think more than just a singer, but as a full-on musician, because some of them are learning how to play scales on the guitar. And so when I talk about scales, sight reading, they're like, oh yeah, it's like this, Miss Tang. It's like that, Miss Tang. And I'm like, yes, you are correct. I didn't teach you anything about the guitar, but you totally get it. Yes.
That's amazing. That to me is just kind of like saying, just be open to not just the strictness of one thing. Just kind of know that music can transcend, beyond this one small package here.
Yeah, yeah. What about you? What would you like to snap and change?
Well, It's tricky for me to say because I'm just so brand new, but I think if there was just maybe just more emphasis on music in schools in general, from what I can tell, that there doesn't seem to be like pipeline. So like good elementary school music programs that lead then to good middle school programs, and that'll impact the whole like economy of singers. Almost you
Yeah.
can think of it that way. Um, I don't know. We are strangely fortunate at First Methodist Church to have a lot of singers, but I worry that in 20 years or something like that, down the future, that if we don't, you know, have more music in the schools
Yeah.
where people are learning, you know, about how to read and just how to sing or just enjoying it really, then it'll be hard to have good choirs in general.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's true, but that's just my sort of small perspective is that I've been in several states now, New York and Georgia, where there's definitely like really like it's clear one feeds to the next and feeds to the next, and people just get that. People understand that's what causes the future, and and sometimes there's something strange about that because then it does become a little bit like top heavy and there's a lot of privilege in understanding how to read music, and good music programs are a lot of times in affluent places as well. So there's definitely a double-edged sword there, and something that I'm passionate about as well is making sure that if you're not as privileged as somebody else, that you still deserve wholeheartedly good music making.
Yeah.
So somewhere in there is an answer.
No, I totally understand what you're talking about because I teach at a high school and a middle school, and the only reason
Yeah.
why I'm even teaching at the middle school was because I had to even contact the principals between my school and the middle school because the middle school feeds into my high school, right? And I only have one feeder school to feed into my program, and I always knew that that's just not enough. So I did some emailing throughout COVID, lots of online conversations. And luckily for me, our principal at Challenger is just super supportive for the arts, realized that we need to bring it back. And so this is actually the second year Challenger has had a choir
Oh yeah.
since, let's say, 15 years. Like last year, it was its first year. So that was like me reviving it back. But I totally understand. It's that linear progression that that kids need. And I noticed, at least in Mira Mesa in this area, they had music education and elementary, but then certain middle schools just didn't have anything, or they only had band and orchestra, which is totally fine. But what about choir or singing, which is kind of like one of the more cheaper options to start as programs? And in my opinion, one of the easier ones too, but
Yeah.
they didn't have it. So I had to advocate and I had to fight for it. But I don't know, maybe the stars aligned and all my principals were just like, yeah, this is a great idea, go for it. So now I try
So
back and forth.
that leads me to another question for you, which is
Yeah.
so with the San Diego Children's Choir, is that the correct name for it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So where do you draw students from? Is it like, do you see a trend? Are they from certain places, or what's that like?
So we have different locations for the San Diego Children's Choir. We have areas that are closer to like Mission Valley, and then we have areas that are like Carmel Valley and those locations. And with the San Diego Children's Choir, we provide choral education for students that don't have choir or a music education at their schools. So that's kind of where we're pulling things, pulling students, but it's more of just we're trying to reach out as well. We have a lot of programs that are dedicated to also elementary learning. I think we're also in the process of creating a non-auditioned, I think, secondary level choir, because my group, which is intermediate, it's middle school, 5th grade to 8th grade. it's still an auditioned ensemble. And then Ruthie Milgard, who teaches the older groups, and that's high school level, they're all auditioned. So we're trying to find ways to keep choir in all of these students' lives. So we're in the process of creating kind of like a non-auditioned group. So it's a little bit more welcoming, because we've seen some kids who try to audition, they get accepted, but they're kind of struggling with the theory part. And it's been tough when we only meet maybe once a week. So that retention is really tough for some of those kids. So we want to create something that's more welcoming for literally any level, so that, like you, something sparks in them, that interest happens. So that's what we do with the San Diego Children's Choir.
Right. Arian, I think he asked me for me to talk about the pipeline I mentioned in different parts of the country. So one good pipeline example is when I was in Georgia. So I went to University of Georgia. I studied. So Georgia is a very interesting place, because the head of the University of Georgia is married to the head choir conductor at Georgia State University. And those are two of the most prominent institutions in the state. And students have such incentive to stay in state, because it's just so much cheaper. And they just get a great education there. Overall, it's really fantastic. And so what he has done is he's got graduate students who are finishing in his program, and then a lot of them work in Georgia. But a lot of the undergraduate music education majors stay in Georgia. And then they tell their students, oh, by the way, I had a great experience when I went to the University of Georgia. So suddenly there's this like really cyclical pipeline that goes on in that state, where everyone knows, like, if you want to keep singing in choirs, you got two great places to keep going, whether you major in music or you decide to major in something else and you still want to keep singing, which is another rant that I'd happily go on, which is, it's so important for people who don't major in music to keep singing.
Yeah.
I'll shout that from the heavens all the time. And many, of course, all of our singers where I'm at work at church they do a lot of other stuff. We only have a few people who are in music. That's it. And so I greatly benefit from all of the experiences that they bring to the table. And yeah, we've got a nice group that reads well. We've got audition chamber choir now, and they read particularly well. And so it's just those singers who aren't music majors, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, it's that encouraging, like, the environment that, like, even for me, I tell my kids all the time, I'm not trying to make you guys the next, like, idol or become music majors. If you feel that there's that push, please know I'm just really passionate about what I do. That's just so sorry, I'm making you guys like high achievers, but that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm
But
with you on that.
But
Okay,
I tell them
do I
all the
need to
time.
ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see here. What were the most important skills and lessons you learned in your development as an educator / choral conductor / administrator?
Listen. I think my first year teaching, I was going through all the stuff in my head, all the book lessons, all of the things that people have taught me, all the things that I've seen before I got my first job. And I forgot to listen to my kids. I forgot to listen to what they actually need. And from a teacher administrative perspective, I was making like leaps and jumps and decisions. Granted, I have the right because I am the teacher, but when I was a new teacher with this new group of kids, I forgot to look at them and understand that I am technically the new teacher. And that transition for them was, for some of them, was really, really tough. And so it was kind of a eye-opening thing for me that I'm like, I know what I'm doing is right, but I should have listened to my kids so that I could help them maneuver through the decisions I've made, instead of just saying, this is the plan. And
Right.
with COVID and all of that, and it slowed us all down. My vision that I had when I first started teaching, like it had to change, it had to shift. So our first year back in the classroom, all I did was listen. I was listening to what they could do. I was listening to what they wanted to do, and it reshaped the way I taught. And I found out that the things that I kind of disregarded, for example, on Fridays, we kind of just vent. I allow my students to vent about what's going on in the world and life.
Mm, yeah.
My brain, I could care less about that. I could literally put all my emotions, negative emotions, and like leave it at the door because all I want to do is make music. But not everyone is like that. And I find that once we vent a little bit, we talk about life a little bit, I can actually make them sight read more, and they're actually not afraid to just jump into it. So for me, it's listening. It's really kind of made me a better teacher for almost every group. And yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I just agree wholeheartedly with that. Yes, yes to listening. I For me, I think we're like, at least for me, I feel like I'm in a people business, and listening is a crucial part of that and understanding. So, yeah, I when I first started out, when I was a first year teacher back in 2014, I feel like I had all these ideas of here's what I want to do, and that was a tough time. First year out it's a lot of listening and a lot of growing and a lot of understanding. Now a few years later, I'm starting a new job, and I feel a little bit more confident in myself. I feel a little bit more like, yes, I do. Listening is definitely crucially important, but at the same time, I want to feel like, no, I have something to say too, and I have good ideas at this point that have been gone through tests and gone through trials and been there and done that a little bit,
Yeah.
just the slightest little bit of that, and I know that'll keep growing more, just with more time, of course. And the other thing is just more about music. So I think one thing that I learned from graduate school and really just from being out there is when it comes to rehearsals, especially with the folks that I lead, they come expecting a lot. And I'm glad about that. And they should expect a lot of me. And so for me, knowing the score just inside and out is crucial.
Yeah.
And I feel disappointed in myself when I feel like I haven't done that. And this is so silly, but even yesterday I was leading rehearsal and I thinking to myself, I should be doing better at this. And I'm still beating myself up about that a little bit, which is maybe just silly. But that's like when it comes to adults, I really want to give them my best because here they are volunteering their time, and I don't have to do that. They all have busy lives. They can all be doing other things like resting, just like recharging. But here they are; they're giving up hours of their life for this cause, and so I always want to give them my best.
Yeah.
So that's another sort of just lesson that I've learned is know the score inside and out, such that you can always help them. Like I always want to give them the tools to unlock the secrets of this piece or whatever. So I echo your thought immediately about listening. That'll never go away. But then just on a separate note of just the people that I deal with, it's just knowing that score and being prepared for them.
Mm-hmm. I know there are some days where I enter a rehearsal and I'm standing in front of the kids and I'm not showing it. I'm not telling it to the kids, but my brain says, I should have looked at this just about maybe 20 more minutes more, maybe just a little bit more. How can I BS just a little bit before I start sounding smart and a teacher again?
Yeah, right. And we've all been there. We know how busy we are. You can't win them all the time. There's that too. There's certain practicality to it. But yeah, I hear you on that.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the question now. Let's go with a guilty pleasure. What's a guilty pleasure of yours?
Okay. I like to binge watch some reality trash TV in my life.
Nice.
So like I said, I used to live in England for a year. So there's this program called Love Island. And
Love Island.
yeah. So that is like my guilty pleasure of needing to keep up with that when it is on. I don't know why. I just have to. So that is my guilty pleasure. Don't tell anybody, okay? I know this is recording.
No, it's okay. Whatever works, man.
That's right. What about you?
Oh man, this sounds dark, but I think when you work with kids every day, you give them your best all the time. You're the best version of yourself, even when life sucks. So for me, and I hope people don't think of me weird, but there is a game called Sims, and I like playing Sims,
Yes.
but I do have a great time of ruining people's lives in Sims.
Incredible. Incredible.
It's a dark turn of my personality, but I have to let off steam in some way. So what I would do is I would see how many characters I could kill in Sims, and
Amazing.
or
Amazing.
how much can I ruin their finances and then leave them be, so that's what I do. It's my guilty pleasure. But
When I was a full-time teacher, I would often think like I need a room where I can just walk in and scream just for a few minutes where nobody can hear me. It's a soundproof room. You know what I'm doing in there, okay? Then I'll walk out and I'll be better.
yes, yeah, that's what I save when I get home. I play Sims and like let off steam.
Amazing.
Wow. You two, thank you so much for a really thoughtful dialogue on some really important topics that we're all working through and on in San Diego. Just a disclaimer to friends out there: there are no real world implications in Sims.
No.
So she's ruining lives and finances within the game, and it really doesn't impact anybody.
It's a video game.
Correct. As I'm sitting here just listening to you chat and dialogue about our education, our state affairs in choral music education in San Diego, music education, the continued development of the pipeline. Working at San Diego State University with my colleagues in music education, I know that we have conversations every day about how to inspire, how to build systems, how to build bridges, how to build networks so that students have a way to engage with the arts from the very beginning up through their experience through high school, and then understanding that they can continue in the arts at the collegiate level, because there's a great meme floating out there somewhere. It's pretty old now, but it's a 2-panel, and the first panel is a symphony orchestra with a chorus saying, if you want this, then you need the second panel, which is a bunch of squirmy, lovely young children at the elementary level just picking up instruments for the very first time. So thank you so much for dialogue on that. Dear friends who are joining us today, if you have any curiosities or questions or topics that you'd like to bring up right now and have our panelists open up to those, you're more than welcome to ask away. So just go ahead and unmute yourself or bring yourself off of your video cams and let us have it. And if we don't have any questions, then we will conclude our session.
There is a question in the chat.
Perfect. I just saw it pop up. Deanna Johnson asks, do you think the focus on STEM in the schools has impacted music in San Diego schools?
I would say yes. Primarily because growing up for me, My parents put me in the arts, but even after a performance, they said, you sounded great, but be realistic. And throughout growing up, it was always about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And even now, I still hear it. A heavy push for engineering, buildings, heavy push for higher scores in math. And it gets to a point where choir or the arts, and this is what I mean by that, I mean by arts programs that haven't had a huge impact at the school. For example, choir at my schools are kind of small, are quite small, so they get overlooked. And last year, I think my class was considered a club in the yearbook instead of an actual class. So it's one of those things that we're still working on, but I definitely still think that it's impacted the thought process of the people in the culture of San Diego, but it may be in a weird way because of COVID. I have also heard kind of like more parents than before who have been more interested in their students being in the arts, because of many different reasons. Maybe their kids have lost their way because of COVID, and they think that the arts will kind of like revive their child's personality and interests and spirits and hearts. But STEM has definitely pushed the arts kind of in the corner. And I think the upcoming bill, like in the next voting, everyone should vote. There's a bill that's going to actually, I forget what it's called, but it's going to give millions and millions of dollars to do job openings for music in California. And from my other colleagues and I, we've been kind of talking about this, and we're assuming, quote unquote, assuming that it would be so much money that we would actually have a difficult time filling in these positions. So there is a turning point, and I think there's this level of appreciation that's coming back for it right now.
Brian, did you want to respond to that at all, or shall we move to the next question?
I think that's great. We can move on. Yeah.
Sure. We have a question in the chat. You both talked about the weakening of the music education, quote unquote, pipeline. I wondered how that connects to our struggles with diversity in the music space, particularly. I imagine that kids who have talent or interests but don't necessarily have access to music ed may never realize potential or may develop their interests in other genres instead.
Oh yeah. Like I said earlier, I mean, certainly in Georgia, I did feel like the richer the population, the more access to high quality music education. And that was true in South Carolina as well. I worked in a place that was a bit rural, and it was just brand new, teaching them music theory. We started small and we kept growing and growing and growing until I left. But it was just a new idea to them. But sort of interesting to go along with the STEM chat. I found that a lot of the upper like echelon of students who were taking all of the AP classes and who were really driven were the ones who were like, yes, obviously I want to do choir. Like, obviously I want to be involved in music. That still engages that part of their brain for them. But also, allowed them to let off steam because they weren't doing calculus. So it's tough. I mean, it's a little bit about letting people know where they can access music education and where they that it's an important thing and that it's a good thing for their life as well. And all of those things are true, but it's a little bit about getting that message out there, I think.
Yeah. I think from a Filipino lens as well, I cannot speak on behalf of the entire Filipino nation and the Filipino culture, but we don't really talk about the arts. And my community that I teach in is primarily Filipino. And I know when my students walk through my doors in my classroom and they see a Filipino teacher, It's usually that weird look. They're like, what? And I have to actually just show them and be myself and tell them, hey, you actually have a place in the classical world. You have a place in pursuing the arts at the collegiate level. Is it easy? No, because the first hurdle they'll most likely have to overcome is impressing their parents. And I have to tell them all the time, with my story, I actually created kind of like a PowerPoint and a list of jobs when I had the conversation with my parents. And I had to tell them, this is what I want to do. This is my plan. This is what I can do. And this is what I will most likely do. And everything like that. And my parents, the way they respond, and I love them, I really do. And they have just a different view in the world. But my mom responded with, anak, or with child, if this is what God wants, then talaga do it. Which is, if this is what God wants, then just do it. You know, she had no other reason. She can't argue. She's just like, all right, I'm just going to trust faith and see what happens with you. And with my dad, he said, he sighed and he just said, I knew this was going to happen. And it's, I think, for the diversity perspective, I know my students just don't see themselves in it. Because there's not enough of us in it. So when I pick pieces and I think about my students, like I said, I listen. I listen to what they like. I listen to what they know. I listen to what they want to hear. So this upcoming winter concert, we're singing something in Vietnamese, Spanish, and in Tagalog, which are the primary languages that many of my students learn at home. So hopefully that will then inspire them to try my classical lens and get them into the classical world and seeing themselves continuing the arts in college in some way. But yeah.
Thank you for that, both of you. It's such a challenging thing to address because as we've all experienced, just in the panel in this room, and who we know to be in positions of leadership across the city and across the county, those positions are filled by a pretty diverse body of people, actually, and yet it still comes down to funding access, to what part of the city you occupy, and where. Whether the arts are valued or not, or supported. So really kind of a hydra of a question with so many heads. So thank you for your perspective on those. Friends in the room, does anyone else have any questions, comments, compliments, or curiosities that they would like to express to our panelists? Deanna, I see you just came alive. But
I just love that you invite them in by listening to their longings. That just really touches me, because I think that's where you reach people. So thank you for your energy and enthusiasm and keeping the choral community strong in San Diego.
Yeah, of course. I love what I do.
Terrific. Well, Brian, welcome to San Diego. It's been lovely getting to know you a little more and chatting with you and finding out more about your program. Marielena, it's been so wonderful to get to know you better and to get to know what you're doing in the schools and how your programs are going to be thriving and continue to grow, and just the chance to chat with both of you. Thanks so much to Choral Consortium of San Diego. We have a number of our leadership here in the call. Carol Manifold, who is our executive director and just doer of all things, without whom choral music in San Diego would crumble. Stephanie Weaver, president of our board. Megan Jones, our new assistant to the executive director, Yewan Lee, who is chair of programming and responsible for bringing this program to you today, and Ibis Laurel, who is providing Spanish translations today and who is also on our board. Thank you so much to everyone. If this was something that you found charming, helpful, inspiring, or thought-provoking, feel free to come to our other Consortium of San Diego events on October 15. World Singing Day in San Diego is at 5 p.m. At Spanish Village in Balboa Park, and that's going to be led by Kathleen Henson and a ukulele group, and it's going to be fabulous, and it'll be free. And then October 26th, beer choir or boo choir for Halloween. That's going to be at 7 p.m. at Society Brewing Co. with Juan Carlos Acosta and Potter Watch, which I'll let you find out more about. The cost of that ticket is $15 or $12 in advance. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.